Hey, I'm Rosie, and I'm the radio coordinator at Distorted. I'm on a quest to find out about the ins and outs of all the jobs in the music industry. Today, I'm joined by Michelle Myrie, producer, drummer, and grants officer for youth music. We chat about all aspects of the industry, from touring and burnout to applying for a grant via the brilliant charity Youth Music. Enjoy!
I just rang up, basically, labels, and I said, can I do some work experience? I'll come in like one day a week. And they were like, yeah. It's really important to kind of understand where it is you want to be in the industry. And sometimes you don't even know where you want to be, but have a start. And that's the beautiful thing about music. It's the one thing that kind of transcends all languages, all barriers. Everyone can connect with it.
Well, hi Michelle. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. We'll dive into explaining the variety of different roles you have in the industry. I know there's multiple, so if you could just talk me through all your roles and what you do.
Okay. Well, I have quite a number of roles. What they would call nowadays a kind of multi-portfolio career. Um, and I basically, in my daytime work or my day job, I work for an organisation called Youth Music, and we basically help marginalised young people get into music. So we invest in organisations, grassroots organisations, to get into music. So that's my day job. And then I'm also a musician. So I'm an artist, musician. I'm a drummer. I've been drumming for over 25 years. Played with a number of bands, gone on tour a number of times. And yeah, I'm also a producer. So I produce house music as well. Um, yeah, so that's everything that I do basically. So I've had a variety of jobs within the industry. I've also worked for a label called Acid Jazz Records, and I worked in the press department now, um, and I've worked in film and television as well. So I've got a kind of a whole breadth of kind of sort of dipping in and out of different sort of sections of the industry basically, whether it be sort of, well, the creative industries as we call it basically. So yeah, that's what I've done. That's my roles.
Yeah, amazing. Sounds like you've got a very holistic view of all the different sectors, how they work, the ins and outs. So that's good. We'll come on to the youth music stuff a little bit later. But I think I'm quite interested to know why you chose this creative industry as you place yourself in.
Yeah, I guess for me, my route into the music industry was kind of like, I did the usual, went to school, did my GCSEs, did my A levels, and then I got to my A levels and did well in that. And then I was kind of like, I don't want to go to uni yet. I want to try my hand at getting into the music industry because at school, that was where I started playing drums. That was how I started. Um, and so, because I played drums at school, I really got a taste for music and I really wanted to be involved in music. My family are in music. So, my dad's a bass player. So, from that, I feel like, I was heavily influenced from school and by my family as well. So, I left school, and then I was like, I'm going to try and go and try and find a role somewhere in a record label of some sorts. Um, that wasn't easy. That wasn't easy.
Yeah.
But that was what I wanted to do, that was what I wanted to do. So I think that's where it kind of started really, was sort of like my family and school.
And you didn't do a degree or anything, you just went straight from school into the industry. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, basically what happened was I did do a degree, but that was later on down the line. I decided to do a degree, but what I did was is that I left school and went and did a sort of full-time job because you need to have money, right? So I must have been about 18, 19, and went and worked down in London, Oxford Street, selling Levi jeans. But whilst I was doing that, I was sussing out what was happening in the industry, right? And I was like, okay, what could I do? How can I get an opportunity to get into the industry, get into a label? And um, I really loved funk, like jazz funk music back in the day. So think about Jamiroquai, Brand New Heavies. I don't know if anyone knows those people yet, but back in the day, those were the big bands, and I really loved them. So I wanted to kind of work for a label that supported that kind of music, and so I just rang up basically labels, and Acid Jazz was one of the ones that I rung. And I said, can I do some work experience? I'll come in like 1 day a week, 2 days a week, and I just want to learn and see what it's like to work for a label. And they were like, yeah. They were like, yeah, come down. Obviously, I didn't get paid to do it. I didn't get paid to do it, which is why I had my full-time job. But I had to take 1 day out, a couple of days out of that full-time job to then get that experience in that label. And I learned so much in the probably 6 months that I was there at Acid Jazz. And I was at their smaller label, sister label, that was Focus Records at the time. Um, and so, yeah, that was how I kind of got my foot in the door. I kind of made an impression. I tried to be confident, I tried to learn as much as I could in that space of time, in the hope that they would basically say to me, we'd love to keep you on. We'd like to offer you a job, and that's what they did. And then Acid Jazz actually took me on. Um, and yeah, that was it. I ended up working at Acid Jazz Records in their press department, and that's how I got my foot in the door.
Oh, amazing. So you literally called up, rung around, and that's how you got your foot in the door.
That was how I did it.
Yeah, researching the right company for you as well, because that's what you were passionate about.
Yeah, I think it's important to do your research. I think it's really important to kind of understand where it is you want to be in the industry. And sometimes you don't even know where you want to be, but have a start. And then once you make that start, you get in, then you can find all of the different roles that then start to, and opportunities that you could kind of get into. But you have to kind of know roughly where you want to be. And then once you're in that space, then you can hopefully start to create those opportunities. But I was lucky. So, and some young people are not. So, it's a bit harder for them to make those connections. So yeah, you just got to go out and research and really just be confident about what it is that you want to kind of do.
Yeah, definitely. So, what does a typical day in the life of Michelle look like with all your variety of job roles?
Yeah, I mean, a typical day in the life. I mean, I love yoga, so I'll get up in the morning, usually do a bit of yoga. My day is pretty kind of like,
Nice.
start off with that, nice little bit of stretching, clears my mental health, my mind. And usually the day job, I start work at 10. So I'm usually, just checking out my organisations, seeing if they need any support, and just the usual day job, that you would do. But generally, it's a kind of 10 till 6 type thing. And then once I'm done with my day job, usually what I would do is I'd normally have to be rehearsing for a show, or I'll be in my studio sort of producing that next track, basically. So, yeah, that's kind of a typical day, generally.
Yeah. I think there's a common theme between people that I've spoken to and that have a variety of job roles, and that is kind of this idea of burnout. And you've got so many fingers in pies, is that if that's the saying. How do you manage that and time for yourself as well? Because I think that is important. I know you've just said about yoga, but are you quite strict with your time and also making sure that you're having self-care as well?
Yeah, I think it's really important to have that time and space to be able to do the things that you need to do to maintain your mental health. I think that's really important. I think certainly coming out of lockdown, I think that was a massive thing for probably all of us, and a massive thing that we all realise that we need to provide ourselves with time, to do those things that are going to help our mental health. Um, as part of my role, I was also a practitioner, so I was also a teacher at a charity before coming to youth music. And so not only was I a practitioner teaching drums, I was teaching production, music production. I was also a musician. And I was also kind of a CSR manager as well, which is kind of getting donations from other organisations into our organisation to help us deliver to young people. So I was doing quite a lot, and then I'd get, a job with a band. Can you lay down some drum tracks for us in the studio? So I'd have to, carve out some time for that. Then I'd have a tour. So it was a lot, and you do realise that you're burning out without even realising until you stop, and then you go, I'm actually really burnt out here, and I've not made any time for myself. So I think lockdown really kind of like highlighted that for a lot of practitioners and a lot of people that do those kind of jobs. So I think it's really important, and now I really try to carve out that time where the morning is really really important for me to kind of really focus on that. um so yeah, that's how I kind of try and manage it, is that the morning is my mindfulness time and really kind of sets my mind right, because that's going to help me get through the day. So I'm really quite mindful of that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think to help that as well, and probably to help opportunities and maybe make the industry more accessible, was this whole remote working as well that came from lockdown. So I was speaking about this the other day with somebody, and I think as much as it was hard and people were probably more fortunate than others in lockdown, I guess it kind of has broadened out our connections a little bit in the industry. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of, it's opened up the opportunity to be able to connect. I mean, we were connecting during lockdown anyway, and I think that highlighted that. But this whole remote working, like me being in London and you being where you're at, that's a whole new way of working. I know throughout lockdown, I was teaching at the time and we discovered Zoom, obviously. And I was able to teach remotely, to young people all over the place. Do you know what I mean? And that was amazing because it meant that we were
Yeah.
able to connect with young people. And obviously you've got that disparity though, where there's some young people that weren't able to connect because they may not have the technology, and that was one of the things as well that was a little bit hard. But, we were able to find a new way of connection. And I think that was beautiful, that was beautiful. And that helped us out quite a lot through those times.
I think so. Moving on then, what is the favourite thing about what you do and about being in the industry?
Um, it's a good question. I think my favourite thing about what I do is just meeting like-minded people. Um, like-minded people who are in the same creative space as me, and that can influence my creativity. And just meeting loads of different people with loads of different styles of music and being able to, use that and create your own kind of thing. I really love that. Um, I think that's kind of the best thing I like, really. It's just meeting with like-minded people. It's really important to have that space together. Um, you know, so I think that's my favourite bit of the job. Certainly as a musician anyway, as an artist.
I think the industry is a very collaborative industry as well, which is great. You never know. You could be speaking to somebody who likes a similar genre of music, and then that springs to a collaboration, or you just never know who you're going to meet, do you?
And that's the beautiful thing about sort of music, it's the one thing that kind of transcends all languages, all barriers, or it's a universal thing, so everyone can connect with it. And that's what's so beautiful about music. You can connect with it. And so if you connect with someone else in that space, you make that connection, you create something else. And it's all about just like that organic kind of, you meet with someone, they have this creative energy, and then something comes from that, something else is born from that. And I really love the idea of, music being able to do that. It's a powerful thing. So, I think I think it's something that kind of rings through all of us,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's powerful.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And then on the flip side of that, what do you find maybe more challenging?
I think what I might find a little bit challenging is like sometimes, imposter syndrome is a thing, sometimes, especially if you're not being creative, you might have creator's block or something like that, which I've had, we all get it, and sometimes that can be quite challenging, especially when you're try to be creative and you can't. So yeah, that would be a challenge for me. I would say, like, feeling like you can't create, or not having the time to be creative sometimes when you're doing all of these different roles, which is why it's important to carve out that space to allow your mind to be free to create. So yeah, I think that's sometimes a challenge for me.
So you overcome it by giving
Yeah.
yourself space to allow creativity again. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you kind of, you really, really try to be creative when you're not being creative, or you can't find that level of creativity that you want. And so I think sometimes it's good to kind of step off a little bit, to step off and allow your brain to just, be, and, not try and, focus heavily on that thing that you're trying to do. You might have a track that you need to finish, but you can't finish the track because you're just not in that headspace. So you just step off, and just like do some other stuff. Like sometimes I might, I've got a forest up the road, it's a 15-minute walk, just walk up to the wetlands, and, with green and loads of oxygen and, trees and people just mulling about. If you can, you come back and, you're like, okay, get back to your studio, and you feel different, and then you just start again, and then it all starts again, so it's just really having those processes of, letting yourself be and not being too hard on yourself as well,
Definitely. And that maybe goes hand in hand with the burnout thing as well.
Definitely. I think, yeah, you can really, really try and try and try and try. And sometimes things just don't happen. But it might be that you've just been doing so many things, in your life or whatever it is, that you really do need to take that time out and take that step out. And I think that always really does help in terms of your mental health and your creativity, is not to always be just drilling down. If you can, you might have a deadline, so that might not be possible, but, I think take as much time as you can to just step off and come back to it. And you'll find that it comes a lot easier.
That's great. Great advice. I think I need to take that into my own practice.
It's a good thing to do, for sure.
So we've spoken quite a lot about your personal experience, but I think quite an important part of this conversation as well is youth music and the work that you do with youth music. Your grants, are you grants officer at youth music?
Yeah, I'm a grants and learnings officer at Youth Music, and I basically manage a number of grassroots organisations delivering music activities to young people. That's what we do, basically, as a charity. We help to marginalise young people, or not marginalise young people, we help marginalise young people get into music, and we know that young people love music, so we listen to what they say, quite a lot, because their views are important, especially when it comes to the creative space. And we know there's a little bit of a divide, and sometimes music can be seen as for the privileged, and so we try to break down that barrier, so that, music is accessible for all. So that's genuinely what, Youth Music as a charity does, but I manage a number of grants within that deliver those music activities to young people.
Amazing. So what kind of projects could apply for funding?
Yeah, there's a number of organisations that we fund, marginalised young people, could be, early years, early years 0 to 5. It could be a project that's kind of like young adults, so, from 18 to 25. It could be anything from, 0 to 25, basically. organisations delivering to young people, to be able to kind of make music and be creative, and have that potential to kind of earn as well, and just bringing those opportunities to young people that wouldn't, ordinarily be able to. One of the regions I manage is Yorkshire. And so I go up to Yorkshire quite a bit, and, check out some of those organisations and just see some of the wonderful work that they're doing. It's just amazing when you see, young people just being creative, making beats and rapping and spitting bars, or it could be, a young person who's never played an instrument before, just really getting their hands on either a drum kit or guitar. It's just an amazing thing to see. And it really brings young people together. So yeah, that's a kind of perk of the job, really seeing what the funding does for those young people and actually seeing it, with your own eyes. It's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's so important as well. I think I was talking to Becky, who is our marketing manager here at Distorted, the other day about this, and I was saying that it's quite hard to find work experience in the industry sometimes, because often it is unpaid, or you have to travel down to London, for example, and unless you have the funds to do that, it's quite difficult. So we were talking about youth music actually, because we have interns here through youth music projects. So we have two interns, Sol and Anya, and they are creating a podcast and a radio show, and 8 episodes of both. And they've got to completely take the reins of the project. So they've decided exactly what they're doing, what themes and topics, who they're interviewing, they're producing it. So Freddie's teaching them how to produce them. So it's amazing. And I think without the youth music funding, it couldn't have happened. So I think it's brilliant.
I mean, it's amazing to hear just the opportunities that can come from, funding an organisation, and them being able to kind of open up those opportunities to young people that wouldn't ordinarily get that. And I think that, once you get your foot in the door or you get that experience, it opens up your eyes about what the opportunity could look like. And I think it's great that, an organisation can kind of offer that and give them that autonomy to be able to control that space and put their own creative input into that. That is hard. The industry is hard to get into. So, when an organisation can open up an opportunity like that, it's massive. It's massive for any young person who's wanting to get into the industry, because it's hard. It's not hard, it's not easy to get into the industry, but I think that, the organisations that we fund that open up these opportunities, allows that, and, it opens that opportunity up for young people that wouldn't normally see that. So yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. Kudos to you guys.
Yeah, we were saying that it's going to open so many doors, because I remember when I first started out in the industry, I went to university in Manchester, and I found networking so daunting at first because I didn't really have anything to sell. I was just kind of selling myself in a way and who I am as a person. But now they've got this portfolio that they've created that they can use that and say, this is what I've done. So I think it really helps that as well.
Yeah, it really does. And I think, in terms of like, just confidence, just being involved in something that it allows you to kind of, build your confidence and develop that, speaking to people and being, being able to communicate, is quite a skill. And it is needed in the industry. If you need to connect with people and network with people who are going to potentially give you an opportunity, it's a skill. So, being involved in an organisation like this is Distorted, or do you know what I mean? And opening up that opportunity, it builds confidence, it builds networking, it allows you to see what the industry is like, it allows you to then carve out your idea of what you want to do. But if you don't get that foot in the door, if you don't network or you don't have the confidence to do that, then it's hard. It's really, really hard. So, you know, that's why these opportunities are great, because it builds all of that and it allows you to then see and connect and just build yourself up. So yeah, it's a good thing. Networking is daunting. But you know, once you build your confidence and develop that, you know, it could be a wonderful thing. It could be a wonderful thing.
Yeah, definitely. On that then, how can organisations apply for funding from youth music?
Yeah, I mean, usually it's an application process. You know, so we have several funds a year, or several rounds a year, for a variety of funds. And so basically, it's a, you know, as I said, an application process where you can complete an application, as an organisation, and you can submit that. So that could be a written application, it could be a video application, it could be in the form of a deck. We also have funding for young artists as well. So we have, basically we have like Catalyzer Fund, Trailblazer Fund, and our Incubator Fund, which is at the moment being kind of reshaped and redeveloped at the moment. And that's for organisations to apply to, you know, be able to kind of deliver a project to young people, offering them sort of access into music. So that's the three funds that would deal with that. We also have an Energizer Fund, which is for 0 to 5s as well. So that's for like young babies and whatnot. So that's our Energizer Fund. But then we also have our funds that is for artists specifically. And that's for anyone who is wanting to kind of, I don't know, take their next steps as an artist, whether it be like creating an EP, you know, an event, you know, setting up your own record label, you know, and you would be given sort of like, you can apply for funding, and it's for £2,500, for you to, you know, invest in your own project and make that first step. So yeah, that's the kind of sort of process really. It's all application process, very accessible. And again, with Next Gen, you can apply via video, application, or a deck, you know, so we try to make it as accessible as possible because we know that not everyone wants to write out an application. So if you fancy, you know, doing a video to explain what it is that you want to do, then you can do that. So we try to keep it as flexible as possible.
That's amazing. And then is all this information and the rounds of funding and everything on the Youth Music website?
That's right. Yeah. It's on our website, which is youthmusic.org.uk. You'll find all of the information under the funding tab there, and you'll find all of the information about us as well. You know, we've been going for a long time now, over 25 years. So, we know a lot about the industry and we've heard a lot from young people. So I think we're pretty clued up in terms of, you know, what young people want, because we're constantly talking to them. Youth Voice is a massive thing for us because we want to hear from them. It's about young people, isn't it? So, you know, we're constantly getting feedback from them. So, yeah, if you do want to apply, get on the website. It's youthmusic.org.uk.
Amazing. And you must see a lot of applications. So a cheeky question, but are there any like tips that people can be aware of when making their applications?
Yeah, I mean, one of my first tips really is just always read the guidance. You know, the guidance is your best friend. It has everything that you would need, in terms of making an application, and making sure that you're eligible. That is the first thing I would say. Just make sure you do read it. We normally make it quite simple for you to read it, you know, so that it's not a chore when you're reading it. But definitely I would say do that. Also, I would say just, you know, be clear about your plan. You know, what it is that you're wanting to do, especially for the artists that are coming in for the Next Gen Fund. You know, just be clear about your plan and what it is that you want to do. That's really important. And just, you know, just make sure that, you know, maybe give it to someone who can read it, and make sure that they can kind of understand where it is that you know, what it is that you're trying to say. Because if they can understand it, it means that you're doing all right. And if they don't understand it, then it's kind of like you need to clear it up a little bit more. So always, you know, make sure that you're, you know, yeah, make sure that your plan is clear. Make sure that your budget as well aligns with your plan. Yeah. make sure it aligns. There's nothing like, worse than like looking at a budget and then going, oh, I don't quite understand where that aligns with that. Just make sure it aligns. Do you know what I mean? Make sure it aligns with your plan. Those are the key things I would say. And just be confident, especially if you're doing those video applications and whatnot. I'm sure you're passionate about your idea. So, really convey that in your project plan, basically. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. I'm sure people will find that very useful. And it's definitely an amazing charity. Yeah, great values. I always like to end these conversations by asking for your one piece of advice or what you would have told your younger self as you were entering into the industry and what you would want them to know.
Oh, wow. I was thinking about this. There's so many things that I would want to say to my younger self right now. What would I want to say to my younger self? I think believe in yourself, because you're going to get a lot of, I don't know, things that are going to really unsettle you in life. And, I think try and be consistent, because when I was younger, I dipped into so many different things. And maybe that was quite a good thing, actually, because it gave me the experience that I've got now. But I just think that, I was, you get influenced, don't you? And so, you're not as consistent. I think consistency is key. Stick with the plan, stick with it. Because I think there's certain things that I did in the past that I could have been consistent with, and I probably would have been a lot further than I am now. But I'm grateful for where I'm at now. But had I been a little bit more consistent, then maybe I might have been a little bit further. So yeah, just believe in yourself and be consistent.
Yeah, I think it's easy to get frustrated as well if things aren't happening quite quickly.
Exactly that.
So yeah, it's easy not to be consistent because you just want it to happen and you can't see the results.
Exactly. And that was one of the things, you just literally, because you don't see that result there straight away, it doesn't mean that people are not listening or not taking part in whatever it is that you're doing. It's just, you just have to build it and it will come. It will definitely come. And that's what I'm seeing now, and I'm a lot older, but if you stick with it and be consistent and just learn, get out there and do it, learn, but be consistent. You'll get to where you need to be. You definitely will.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining me.
Aww.
It's been amazing to hear about you and youth music as well. Hopefully we'll speak to you soon.
Definitely. Well, thank you for inviting me onto the podcast. It's really nice to be asked, about, pathways into the industry because I've been there and done that. So it's really nice to have that conversation, So thank you for making me feel very comfortable. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad. Thanks so much for listening. Subscribe to the podcast to catch the next episode. And if you'd like to ask our guests any questions or if there are any more job roles you'd love to learn more about, then get in touch with me via LinkedIn @Rosie Black.